Well, quite the motley crew we got here. So, witness, please state your name and occupation for the court. Yujin Mikitaba, lecturer in forensic medicine at the Imperial Yume University in Tokyo, Japan. What is Gory doing here? And Professor Mikitaba, the young lady beside you is... this is Dr. Maria Gory, Scotland Yard's practicing coroner. The daughter of Dr. Scythe, I understand. Yes, Dr. Scythe. I'm afraid I can't tell you why she's here. She just appeared. You summoned this strange Japanese man as a witness to that autopsy. But you don't summon Mama. That makes no sense. She was there too. That's about the size of it. I've had her eyes boring into the side of my cheek constantly, whilst I was in the antechamber too. Poor man. The idea of it's making me shudder. The revelations about Dr. Scythe that came to light some days ago defiled the reputation of the entire judiciary. She was therefore deemed unfit to appear as a witness in today's proceedings. The Ministry of Justice's decision on that is final. Well, we wouldn't want any more perjury to be committed, would we? The Ministry of Justice. Some questionable strings are being pulled, I think. Almost certainly with him around. I remember you, Dr. Mikitaba, but I certainly never expected to be meeting you under these circumstances. Yes, it's been a long while, Lord Strongheart. The prosecution understands that you were a visiting student of forensic science in London until 10 years ago. And that's right. I studied under Dr. Wilson at St. Sinner's. So you were present at the autopsy of my brother, Lord Clint Van Zykes. I was, yes. I assisted Dr. Wilson with the entire procedure. She's still staring right at him. Mama is far more skilled than any Japanese man. Well, Dr. Wilson asked me to be his primary assistant on that occasion. And this autopsy report was actually penned by you, I believe. Yes. I noted all of the doctor's findings, and when we were done, he read through the document and signed it. Poor Mama. As secondary assistant, she wouldn't have had such a good view of all the innards. So, Professor, do you remember Inspector Gregson? Yes, of course. If it wasn't for his assistance, Lord Van Zykes' autopsy would never have happened. But he was absolutely convinced that it would reveal decisive evidence against Genshin, you see. Lord Strongheart had to entreat the nobility to allow it to take place. Do correct me if I'm wrong, my lord. It was as a result of that autopsy that a mass murderer was apprehended and justice was done. But Gregson admitted it before he was killed. He admitted that the results of the autopsy were fabricated. You were there at the time, so you must testify. You have an obligation to tell the truth about what really went on. Absolutely. That's precisely why I'm here. And that's why I'm here too. Very well then, you will give your formal testimony now, witness. Before you begin, a word of warning. Oh? You will state truthfully and accurately what you saw and what you heard at the time. I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, my lord. The moment your testimony verges on supposition, I will expel you from my courtroom. Remember that. Yes, a lot of dots. Witness testimony. The autopsy of Clint Van Zykes. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy result having been fabricated. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword, transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange. There were no other signs of internal injury, nothing questionable at all. It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach. Stomach? Presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant. Huh. I want to know more about that evidence. No indication. Nothing to suggest fabrication. Professor Mukataba, are you certain about that? Well, nothing that I could positively identify as such, much less swear it in testimony. Oh, look at that face. Well, that clears things up nicely. The only fabrication here, Asogi, has come from you. What? You claim the inspector confessed just before his death, but that is the fabrication. No, he freely acknowledged it. I swear he did. Freely, with the tip of a sword at his throat. The man was clearly at his wit's end. The court will give no credence to his confession that was uttered in obvious desperation. Quite simply, there was nothing questionable about the investigation of Lord Clint Van Zyke's death. And with this testimony, we have, without question, uncovered the whole truth of the matter. I have the right to cross-examination? If I may, my lord. There was most certainly something questionable about it, and the whole truth does rather elude as I feel. I beg your pardon. Well, you're obviously aware of the facts of the case. All four of the professor's previous victims died with an enormous beast. When an enormous beast was set upon them that ripped out their throats. Yeah, this is a different thing. Oh, such horrifying crimes. But curiously, the killer's last victim, Lord Clint Van Zyke's, suffered a different fate. Yes, you're right. He was stabbed through the heart with a sword, a Western sword. That's enough. I believe I warned you about this, witness. I promised to curtail your testimony as soon as it entered the realms of supposition or speculation. None of that was speculation or supposition, is it? Just no. Relevant. Very well, my lord. In that case, the defense will pursue a conclusion to this during the cross-examination. What? I have the right to cross-examine every witness after testimony. And I fully intend to exercise that right. Ha-ha! Ryunosuke. I'm afraid that even the presiding judge has no authority to contravene the letter of the law, as I'm sure every member of the judiciary present in the gallery would agree. Oh yes, I agree, yes, quite. Very well. You may begin, counsel. However, the moment your argument strays from the established facts, I will not hesitate to bring the cross-examination to an end. Proceed with caution. Yes, my lord. Right. I very much want to know about the stomach situation, the autopsy of Clint Van Zyke's. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart that I found a little strange. Yeah, I want more details on that as well now. In all of the previous 4 killings attributed to the professor, the victims were killed by an enormous dog, I believe. Their throats were, well, mauled. Correct. And yet Lord Van Zyke's was stabbed. Do you mean to say? You think Lord... No, you can't say think, you can't know. I think Lord Clint Van Zyke's was may not have in fact been one of the professor's victims? Yeah, I knew he'd do that. There is no basis on which to doubt the findings of the investigations carried out at the time. But Genshin Asogi confessed to all his crimes upon his arrest. Yeah, why did he do that? He admitted to having taken the lives of all 5 members of the aristocracy. Who's he protecting? That's where my mind goes now. Who's he protecting by doing that? Why? Yet the beast that was used to carry out the killings was never identified. No evidence was found to suggest that Genshin had ever kept a dog. A true hound of hell. Okay, not much there. There were no other signs of internal injury, nothing questionable at all. Okay. It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach. Right, what is it? What? What exactly was it, though? What does beautiful but dangerous mean? Well, it was sparkly and round with a hole, as if it might slip over a finger, perhaps. A ring, then. It was a ring, belonging to Genshin Asogi. My father's ring? Was inside the victim's stomach? At the time, Genshin wore a large ring on the digitus quatus of his left hand, the 4th, or ring, finger. I'd understood it was some sort of keepsake. When my father left Japan for London 16 years ago, I was 8 years old. But I remember that ring. You do? My father's possessions were sent to our family home in Japan after his death, but the ring wasn't among them. This is gonna start getting into, where is it? This. The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi that Mr. Vigil claims disappeared after the convict's execution. Apparently Mr. Asogi described it as the only weapon I have left. I, Genshin Asogi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son Kazuma Asogi in the Empire of Japan. So deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land, and the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. So he should have got the ring. So why didn't he? Obviously not. It was a key piece of evidence. It remains under lock and key in the stores at Scotland Yard to this day. After the autopsy, Genshin was summoned by the police to check for the presence of his ring. It wasn't on his hand, of course. Moreover, there were deep abrasions on his finger where it had been pulled off. And they arrested the man there and then, right before my eyes. How could they? I brought the ring along with me today. What? Well, can we see it? Ooh, that's a nice ring. Here it is, a bit dusty from years in the stores. Good gracious, yes, that's it. Haven't seen that in 10 long years. And that was found inside the victim's stomach. Yes, I'm afraid so. You hesitated there, Professor Mikataba. Should we read something into that? Well, it's just that thinking back now, I didn't actually witness the moment it was extracted from the victim's body. Oh my, really? At that precise moment, Dr. Wilson had asked me to fetch him a new scalpel, you see. Dr. Gore? The removal of this historic evidence from the stores requires my consent, does it not? What's your point? However it came to be here, the court cannot deny that this is crucial evidence for today's proceedings. Gotcha. Very well, you may submit it. Mr. Asogi's ring has been entered into the court record. Let's get a good look at that. It's not the sort of ring normally seen in Japan. They almost look like claws protecting the jewel. What's in the jewel? What's in the jewel? What's the jewel? There's gotta be something with that jewel. Looks like something the Jingwong Mafia would have. These fat claws are doing a good job of protecting the equally fat gemstone in the middle of this ring. Yes, if you were clumsy, you could give yourself a rather nasty cut on them, I should think. Ow. Are my fingers bleeding? Those really are sharp. Oh my, that was very quick clumsiness, Mr. Naruhodo, even for you. Who would make such a dangerous ring? You couldn't swallow it without doing yourself some fairly serious damage, surely. Sticky, mucky bun of about that size would go down much better, with some red bean paste in the middle. Someone as clumsy as me would probably manage to choke on it somehow. It's clearly gonna be like this, maybe like there's something under the gemstone. You need to get the gem out and there's gonna be like a message. If this is like his last weapon, that's what I'm thinking. So that's sort of normally see in Japan. That's what makes it, You must examine it very carefully, Mr. Naruhodo. Very carefully indeed. Yeah, I'm bleeding. Presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant. So what we got now? We got the ring. Well, let's go back to the beginning and see what we can do here. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart that I found a little strange. There were no other signs of internal injury, nothing questionable at all. See, if he swallowed the ring, it would have cut the throat. We've just been through that, so that doesn't make sense.
Objection!
The court has heard that the ring was extracted from the victim's stomach. But you didn't actually see it being removed, did you, Professor Mikutaba? That's right. As I said in my testimony before, at that moment, I was fetching a replacement scalpel Dr. Wilson had requested. In other words, you can neither confirm nor deny whether this ring, in fact, really came from the victim's stomach or not. What are you suggesting, counsel? That the ring was never in the victim's stomach to begin with. It's entirely feasible that Dr. Wilson fabricated that detail about the autopsy. But he was saying that Dr. Wilson was in possession of the ring in advance, after it was somehow stolen from Mr. Asogi. And he produced it during the procedure, pretending to have found it there and then in the victim's stomach.
Objection!
Supposition at best. What possible evidence do you have to support such a rash claim? Whose side do you want, mate? This evidence right here. That's the autopsy report. That's explicit in that report, counsel. Other than the ring, nothing unusual was noted internally, so I'm not sure how you intend to prove your point. You've already done it for me, my lord. The lack of internal injury says it all. What? To swallow a ring of this size, you would require considerable effort and determination. And in addition to its size, there are sharp claws around the gemstone to contend with. My brother was a determined man, and on the brink of death even more so, I'm sure. That's not my point. He would have stopped at nothing to ensure that evil killer was brought to justice. But if he really had swallowed that enormous ring, it's inconceivable that no traces of its passage down his throat would have remained as internal trauma. No. By God, he's right. And there you've arrived at the sticking point. That's precisely why I had my doubts about the findings myself 10 years ago. Then why didn't you say something at the time? I did. I still remember the conversation I had with Dr. Wilson in the laboratory that day. Look at this. Now, this is a very curious thing to find in a man's stomach, wouldn't you say? But isn't that rather peculiar, Dr. Wilson? What's that now, Mikutaba? Well, if he swallowed a ring of that size, with those sharp metal claws that it has, surely you'd expect to see damage to the throat and esophagus, torn mucous membranes at the very least. Dr. Mikataba, may I remind you that I have vastly more experience than you. I'm terribly sorry. I can think of plenty of ways to explain why no injuries would be seen. No, let's say this. The victim would appear to have ingested the item as evidence to identify his assailant. Go ahead, write it down. Appear. So I was right. Dr. Wilson deliberately fabricated the results of the autopsy to implicate my father. I'm disappointed, counsel. That argument is nothing more than speculation. What? Dr. Wilson was Britain's leading authority on forensic science and autopsy work. There is no scientific basis on which to doubt the man's expert opinion. Pardon the interruption, my lord, but damage to the mucous membranes of the throat is easily identified even in living subjects. Using a device called an endoscope, recently demonstrated in practical use in France. I want one. The government can pay. I don't think so. And Dr. Gorey, rest assured that your removal of evidence from the stores without permission will not go unpunished. We open up the dead to find the truth. I beg your pardon. But Mama, she chose to stitch her corpse up, with all her secrets inside. That's wrong. Dr. Gorey, it's looking as though she's chosen to walk a different path to her mama. Ooh. Nope. Yes, the ring. What about the ring? I've just remembered something. An earlier incident. What incident? The one I recounted to you before, about a memory I have. Of Genshin Asogi saving my life. What? My father saved your life? It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep. You're coming with us. Your money or your life. There's the ring. All of our assailants were what's that say? Lost? There's gotta be lost dog. I'm still wondering about this picture. There's gotta be details here other than that ring. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. The next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. His left hand, you say? It was on the ring finger of his left hand that he used to wear that ring. Are you saying... I've always believed those thugs were after me. But now I'm starting to question if perhaps I wasn't the intended target after all. Wait, but... Genshin was arrested 2 days after that attack. And in that short interval, the decisive evidence needed to indicate him was miraculously found. You mean the ring was stolen from him? You think that's what those thugs were after that night? Oh my, thugs, I said.
Objection!
Why are you objecting? You pathetic coward. You expect me to believe that you weren't involved? Ah, I see. What do you mean by that? It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who took it. You stole my father's ring. You set the whole thing up so you could paint him as a mass murderer. Kazuma. Open your eyes. Ryunosuke? You must know deep down. The truth can be completely obscured, even when your judgment is only slightly clouded. But at the moment, you seem to be floundering through a dense fog. Is that why you were so insistent I should be present in this trial? To see you like this? Well, this is an amusing spectacle. What a grandiose expression on your face, as if you were Lady Justice herself. It seems you've thoroughly convinced yourself of this alleged fabrication of the autopsy results. So much so that you're apparently blind to the blatant contradiction that would be born out of it. What? Though it's extremely hard to believe, let us imagine that there was some misconduct during the autopsy. If that were the case, why would Asogi not have disputed the findings in his trial? Yeah. I'm very much like, hold on, why? Oh, what's he protecting? Something to do with Iris? In the closed court hearing 10 years ago, the defendant never once denied the claims against him. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zykes? Yes, that is indeed correct. Upon hearing the verdict of guilty, he merely closed his eyes, quietly accepting the judgment. The actions of a man who has accepted responsibility for his deeds and is resigned to his fate. But then... Oh my, that is very strange. If Mr. Asogi did nothing to oppose the charges against him, then... that would surely mean there was no fabricated evidence. An obvious conclusion, at which you should have arrived many minutes ago, Prosecutor Asogi. Your twisted loyalty and clouded judgment are hampering your ability for logical thought. Genshin Asogi's silence at this hearing can mean only one thing. There was no fabrication of evidence during the autopsy of his final victim 10 years ago. God, I'm back again. Oh yeah, so that makes sense. Quite so, yeah. But if that autopsy was all above board, there'll be nothing to stop Lord Strongheart bringing this trial to an immediate conclusion.
Objection!
What? Thank you, Ryunosuke. If it wasn't for your frank words just now, this trial may very well have ended prematurely. What did I say? Kazuma? What did I say? What's this latest absurdity, Counsel? My lord, your reasoning is perfectly sound, but for one giant hole, I beg your pardon. You claim my father's silence was due to the fact that there was no fabricated evidence. But there's another possible explanation. You've overlooked the possibility that he had a reason for maintaining that silence.
Objection!
Silence that would lead to him being convicted and sent to his death. If the autopsy results were an invention, there's no conceivable reason why the man wouldn't have protested.
Objection!
Oh, those results were an invention, all right. There's no question of that. But are you forgetting that 2 people with a connection to the autopsy have been assassinated? If I force the grievances I feel from my mind, I start to see you in a very different light. I think perhaps it's you who's been living in delusion these 10 years. Me? Kazuma-sama has created one last chance for us here, Mr. Naruhodo. If we can only show that there was a reason for his father's silence in his trial, a reason why the man would have said nothing, even though he was innocent. Could it have been part of some negotiation, perhaps? Enough rhetoric. The court must be shown evidence. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asogi's silence in court? Well, it has to be something related to him. So, what have we got? I got a weird hiccup at that point. Right, so, letter of introduction. What we got here? Chief Warder, Daily Vigil is relieved of his post, immediate effect. Arrest to redundancy pay, blah blah blah. Aiding and abetting the escape from prison with convict just prior to his execution. Details of escape are still being investigated. Full cooperation with inquiries would be expected. Additional notes, maybe it's here. Indications are the jailbreak plot was conceived prior to the convict's incarceration. It is believed the convict engaged in some form of negotiation with the prison staff in order to secure assistance. Full disclosure of information regarding these negotiations will be demanded. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asogi's silence in court? He's got to be protecting something, so it's like we can't switch over to people, so I can't be like it's protecting Iris. I would say he's trying to protect Van Zykes. Baddock, that is. But he doesn't seem to have any clue as to what's going on. Gregson. I don't think it's that. Protecting Clint, maybe? What could he be protecting? Anything I can think so far is like I've got three ideas basically. Like maybe something to do with his will. Maybe something directly related to Clint, but the three ideas are is like that's one. That's two, but three is still the same idea of Clint. But which piece of evidence do I want for Clint? I'm gonna go with the photo and see what we get.
Take that!
This is the defense answer to that question, and this sounds very generic, doesn't it? As I indicated before, my patience for rhetoric is growing thin. Damn it. You could have at least accompanied that penalty with an explanation of why that answer was wrong. Yeah, it would have helped. Kazuma-sama's father knew that the evidence being used to convict him was fabricated. Why would he have said nothing in his trial? To protect someone, that's my logic. If it were me, I'd have protested my innocence until I was blue in the face. But you were in a similar circumstance, so... So if we're right about the autopsy results, it must have been a strong reason for his silence. Oh, then perhaps... he was saying nothing in exchange for some sort of... clemency. Oh! That could be it. My lord, the defense would like to... Enough rhetoric, the court must be shown evidence. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asogi's silence in court? It's the dismissal note. Tis. Because it's like the clemency is like, it's right here. And the additional notes. It was planned beforehand.
Take that!
It's true that Genshin Asogi's silence during this trial resulted in his conviction. But that didn't actually lead to his execution. On the contrary. It led to his escape. An escape that was only possible because he'd been sentenced to death. Although I find it hard to believe my father would have negotiated in that way, the defense is correct. A fake execution, falsification of a death certificate, and a jailbreak inside a coffin. Clearly such an elaborate plan couldn't have been carried out by my father alone. He must have had the help of a collaborator from the judiciary. I have here the dismissal notice of the chief warder who was working in the prison at the time. The notes read, there are indications that the jailbreak was in planning prior to the inmate's incarceration. In other words, and there were suggestions of some sort of negotiation, clemency, between Mr. Asogi and the British government. In exchange for his silence in court, he was given an assurance that he would be broken out of prison, so they could try and bring that case to an end because it was an embarrassment. Yes, with that sort of clandestine agreement in place, I can imagine he would have kept very quiet. I would go further that, in fact, I would say that the elaborate jailbreak of Mr. Asogi can be explained in no other way. Indeed. It's all coming together now. Order, first fabricated evidence and now a jailbreak conspiracy? Of course, because it's all intimately linked. The prosecution wishes to summon new witnesses to the stand. Witnesses? People who can testify about the jailbreak that took place 10 years ago. Governor Caden and the poor chief warder of the prison. I won't allow this trial to turn into a farce, to summon the governor of the prison after all these years. Oh, it wouldn't be any trouble, my lord. What? Father? They're outside again, aren't they? My dear friend may appear a little rattle-patted. Okay. At times, but I can assure you he is extremely thorough. He wired both Barclay and the local prison earlier. Asking Governor Caden and Mr. Vigil to attend the Old Bailey is a matter of extreme urgency. Mr. Shlomes did that? Are you telling me that both men are, unless I'm much mistaken, waiting just outside the courtroom at this very moment? God damn it, Shlomes. My lord, you must permit this trial to proceed as you declared at its outset. You promised that he would stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Very well. Bring in the witnesses. Make no mistake, I too would like nothing more than to lay this business to rest, once and for all. Oh yes, quite yes. Cup of tea, anyone?